when he says.
Good evening. We welcome you to a meeting of the Buchanan Community Schools Board of Education. All regular meetings have been posted on our district website, in our central office, and in each district school building. Tonight's agenda has been posted. Our school board members receive the agenda and all supportive documents for reports and action items several days prior to this scheduled meeting, so we can review information, prepare questions or comments, and are ready to participate fully in the discussion and votes that encompass the duties of this office. This meeting is a meeting of the Buchanan Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting school district's business and is not considered a public community meeting. The Buchanan Community Schools Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters as indicated during the public comment portion of the agenda. We request that each interested participant complete and turn in the public comment card to ensure responses can be appropriately addressed. Thank you for your support of Buchanan Community Schools. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call.
Mr. Carlson.
Here.
Miss Berry.
Here.
Miss Brackett.
Here.
Miss Lesh here. Dr. Carlin.
Here.
Miss Ryder.
Here.
And Dr. Burnett.
Here.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I motion the agenda for the board meeting of March 13th, 2023 be adopted as written.
Support.
Any need for adoptions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Ruth, did you second that?
Yes, I did.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Miss Berry.
Yes.
Miss Brackett.
Yes.
Miss Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin.
Yes.
Miss Ryder.
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett.
Yes. And moving on to visitors, I'd like to welcome you all. Anybody else to Ms. Buxton?
Our winner is here and all additional staff, so welcome everyone to our board meeting.
All right. Very good. Moving on to our item F, Points of Pride. And we're looking at staff book appreciation, the
Yep.
March winner.
There's a lot this month, so that's awesome. So for Buck Staff Appreciation, March nominees were April Curtis, Moccasin Mental Health Liaison, Brian Pruitt, Buchanan High School Principal, Brittany Thomas, Buchanan Middle School Paraprofessional, Cindy Bowerman, third grade teacher, Donna Trigg, Moccasin Interventionist, Haley Sater, Moccasin third grade teacher, Jane Mahu, Ottawa Substitute, Casey Macbeth, Ottawa and Moccasin Literacy Coach, Kristen Baker, Ottawa Media Assistant, Laura Hinkle, Ottawa Guidance Counselor, Lauren Hendrick, ECSE Teacher, Lisa Sears, first grade teacher, Mary Colglazer, Ottawa Food Service, Michael Babcock, Moccasin Principal, Mindy Cooper, Moccasin Substitute, Mr. Percy Tobar, Buchanan Community School Bus Driver, Philip Place, Director of Informational Technology, Randy Brooks, Buchanan Middle School Interventionist, and Tara Mabry, Kindergarten Teacher, and Elizabeth Johnson, the Ottawa Elementary Administrative Assistant, was our selected winner this month. And we like to read what was submitted on her behalf. So filling the position of administrative assistant is not an easy task, especially when you are running the office alone. Elizabeth Johnson joined Ottawa in late September, and in the short time she has been with us, she has never stopped smiling and comes to work each day with a positive attitude. I greatly appreciate that Elizabeth is self-directed, seeks answers to questions, and is so supportive to our staff and students. Her customer service skills go above and beyond. She does not give herself enough credit for all that she has learned and how well she is doing in such a short time. Elizabeth is definitely an outstanding buck, and we are glad she filled the big shoes that were left as Ottawa's administrative assistant. And that's from Ms. Dennison, the Ottawa principal. Another was Elizabeth is incredibly professional and friendly with our family. She is sweet and compassionate with the students while being supportive and helpful to the staff. She had great big shoes to fill and is doing a wonderful job. And then Elizabeth always goes above and beyond with a smile on her face. It is so nice to have her be the first face someone sees entering our school. She will make parent phone calls for you and is super organized. She is a great example of amazing happens here. So on behalf of the Board of Education and administration of Buchanan Community Schools, we thank you for your service and encourage you to keep up the great level of achievement and service to our district. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Elizabeth Johnson. I see the smile.
Yes.
Right? Counterfeit. Congratulations.
All right. And as we move down this list, we also have our 2023 Women's Varsity Basketball District Champs. Right?
Yeah. So in addition to this long list of staff appreciation, we have other points of pride, including, like, just as you said, our women's varsity basketball district champs and regional champs. And they go on tomorrow to play in the quarterfinals at Bangor High School tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, and we are rooting them on. We also have, yes, go Bucks.
Yeah, go Bucks.
We also have some other areas that we'd like to celebrate. Our middle school choir students earned a Division II rating at the Middle School Vocal Festival. Our high school band students earned a Division I rating, and I believe our middle school students also
They did.
did a Division I rating with with an A. So yes, so lots of things to celebrate, and we also have a special guest in the audience. And Chris, would you like to go ahead and kind of share some things about?
Yeah, so Faith Bartley is with us today, who just finished third place in the Michigan State powerlifting competition with a combined weight of 715 pounds.
Ooh,
And Faith has agreed to say a few words up here, and she doesn't even know what I'm going to ask her yet.
all right.
You want to go to the mic? Go to the mic. Everybody can hear you. So, I'm ignorant when it comes to powerlifting, but I imagine I'm not the only one here. So, can you take us through what your competition did to get you to 715?
Yeah, so powerlifting consists of three, what we call the big lifts. So you start off with your squat, which is a back squat, and you get 3 attempts. So you start with an opener, which is generally a weight you know you can get, and you have 3 judges who will judge you on something they call like depth and like if your feet move, just some basic technicalities. And if you get 2 out of 3 white lights, you get a confirmed lift. And then your second attempt, if you have a confirmed first attempt, you'll generally go up for a higher weight and attempt more weight. And then the process is the same for the third lift. So most people on their third lift will attempt a personal record lift or even a state record. So after squat, you move on to bench, which follows a very similar setup, obviously a different lift. The judging is the same. They're looking for different technique, and they're looking for different technicalities. If you get 2 out of 3 white lights, then you are confirmed good to go. And then they take your highest lift. So like, say I did my third attempt to squat and I did 250 pounds and that was confirmed. They would take that weight and they would set it aside to add to my separate total. And then they would do the same with bench press. And so if I got 125 on bench, they would add that to the 250. And then finally you would do your deadlift, which you also get 3 attempts at. And then whatever your final highest confirmed lift on is that, they would also add to your total. So for me, at States, I hit a 250-pound squat and then a 125 bench and a 340 deadlift to add me up to a 715 total. And then they take that and compare it to other girls in your weight class, and they say, oh, so this girl lifted the most weight, so she's first, and then this girl lifted the second most, so she'll take second, and so on.
Very cool.
That's impressive.
That's all I have.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I said you're famous on Facebook.
Thank you.
We're going to go down and take a
Yes.
picture, Michelle said.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Doing all.
Top
All
3
right.
state, Michelle said picture.
All right.
Chris, we lifted that one time at tennis practice, remember? Remember? It was just like that.
I was just thinking today we would go to the club doing aerobics.
Sorry, I didn't think of you a countdown.
Well, congratulations. We've got a lot of good stuff happening around here.
Yes.
All right, moving right along, Superintendent Department reports.
The reports are in your board packets. Lots of good information in there that you can pull out and highlight some of the good things that are going on. I do want to pull out one from the high school principal about the counselor's office. Just a lot of work, a lot of headway in there, and good things that are happening too within the council department. And the other thing is, it's fully staffed. So we have 2 counselors. We have Kim Olson, who's working through MCAN, and then also we have a full-time administrative assistant in that office. So they're doing great work in that department, as well as all the other schools.
All right, very good. And moving on to presentations.
Yep, so we have Mrs. Falkenstein up first to give us a special education presentation. Pardon? I said, you're up first.
So last year in my report, I focused, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I focused on the process used to possibly obtain special education services for students. This year, there have been several instances of possible expulsion involving special education students that require specific procedures based on special education law. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that. In 1988, the Honig and Doe decision was a landmark case in which the United States Supreme Court dealt with the issue of expelling a disabled student based on the actions arising out of the child's disability. In this case, the court ruled that a school district may not unilaterally exclude or expel a disabled student from the classroom setting for dangerous or disruptive conduct growing out of their disabilities. The child in this case was John Doe, was a 17-year-old boy with significant challenges in his ability to control his behavior, impulsivity, anger towards others. His grandparents argued that a child with a disability who is disciplined based on actions arising from that child's disability may not be subjected to school disciplinary actions, including expulsion, without the right to due process under IDEA, which is a special ed law, with the district following the procedural safeguards as to the right to due process in an IEP meeting. The Honig case is a landmark decision because the court created what is now known as the 10-day rule, which allows the district only to suspend a child for up to 10 days without parental consent or court intervention. The court ruled that a student cannot be removed from school if the inappropriate behavior is a result of their disability. Now, under IDEA, a child may be expelled for up to 10 days for disciplinary actions and infractions, and up to 45 days for dangerous behavior involving weapons or drugs or seriously bodily harm. And that means the victim was hospitalized seriously, not just hitting and those kinds of things. However, if a school is seeking a change of placement, suspension, or expulsion of a child in excess of 10 days, an IEP meeting must be held to review the causal relationship between the child's misconduct and his disability. That specific meeting has become known as the Manifestation Determination Review, or MDR. At the time, I was not a very popular person with my fellow administrative colleagues. One even called the representatives in Lansing and Washington, D.C. to determine if what I was saying was true, that the federal government had taken that stance since we had some special ed students that had been suspended for over 50 days. It was true, and they didn't care for that. So an MDR is an individual entitlement under special education for a student with an individualized educational program, or an IEP, who has experienced a change of placement due to a violation of the district's code of conduct. Parents must receive procedural safeguards for every meeting, including MDRs, which you have copies of those up there now so that you can see what that is. Safeguards note protections offered to the students with disabilities along with dispute resolution options for parents. An MDR must occur within 10 school days of any decision to change the child's placement because of that violation. A change of placement occurs when there's been more than 10 consecutive days, the student has been subjected to a series of removals that constitute a pattern, so the pattern can be the same kind of behaviors, the same time of day, the same location, or in the same class, occurring with the same adults or same group of students. When the current behavior is substantially similar to all the other behaviors in previous incidents that have resulted in removals, and because of additional factors like the length of the removals are all the same, the total amount of time that the student has been removed, and the proximity of the removals to each other. So the MDR review that we had in the district is conducted by the same IEP team that places students into programs. So there's an administrator, a gen ed, and a special ed teacher, and the team has people from RESA, sometimes the school psychologist, and the teacher consultant, and the social worker, sometimes just one. The student is often there, especially if they're in middle school or high school, and the parents may invite others. We've had advocates and lawyers, as well as the district can do that as long as we notify parents. Then there's a complete description of the misconduct that is noted as the rationale for the meeting, and minutes are taken during the proceedings. During that MDR meeting, the participants complete a thorough review of the students' files. They carefully consider all relevant information in the CA60, which is the student file, reports from previous schools, including special education referrals and IEPs, and you have to look carefully so you don't miss anything, because you don't want to go to a hearing or have a problem and miss something. Grades, work samples, state, district, class assessment results, school history, attendance, mobility, communication, and language skills. Also, we consider anecdotal teacher observations and data logs. So they log those into PowerSchool as log entries, and there's also a pattern of removal, which I send to each of the schools at the beginning of each year. and they note all the removals that are there. I get notification of when those occur, and they try and indicate not only the behavior, but what were the possible triggers or the antecedents to the behaviors, as well as the consequences, normally the days out of school. With that POR record, pattern of removal, at Ottawa and Moccasin, 5 minutes is a half a day out. At the middle school and high school, an hour or 5 minutes is an hour because of the attendance, how attendance is taken. So if Ottawa and Moccasin took attendance every hour, like the middle school and high school, they wouldn't get dinged, I guess you could say, for small amounts of time out of the classroom that count towards suspension. Also considered at the meeting is the current IEP of the student, noting the area of eligibility and whether that's possibly appropriate and whether other information should be included. The goals and objectives in the plan, supplemental aids and services, do they get occupational, physical, and speech therapy, behavior plans, accommodations, modifications, and support, and finally, there has to be a parent interview and information received from the parents. Oftentimes, they do private assessments, medical and mental health assessments. So the review of all that information is to get a clear picture at that meeting of the whole child and determine not so much the eligibility area, but determine what exactly is happening with that particular child. There are 2 questions that have to be answered at the meeting. The first question is, was the conduct in question caused by or did it have a direct and substantial relationship to the student's disability? So if you consider students' possible disability eligibility areas that we have in Buchanan, and if she or he were capable of understanding the social situation, the rules that are established by the school district, and acting in accordance with them. Would you find it hard to make that determination if the student was cognitively impaired, say an IQ of 50 when the average is 100? Would you find it difficult if the child had a specific learning disability, also had speech and language supports, and had difficulty processing in terms of talking themselves, as well as understanding what was said to them by an adult or another student? Or the child was emotionally impaired, an inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships within the school environment, inappropriate types of behavior or feelings under normal circumstances. That's how you qualify. Or the student was hearing impaired. Was the student wearing their hearing aids? Did they understand what was said to them? Do the hearing aids work? Or the student was OHI, otherwise health impaired, ADD or ADHD, which reflects on a limited strength, vitality, and alertness. And the alertness comes under, as indicated by an inability to manage and maintain attention, to prioritize the environmental stimuli in a classroom, including heightened alertness to that stimuli that results in limited alertness with respect to the educational environment. Or the student was ASD, was a student with autism spectrum disorder, which most always includes a marked impairment in the areas of social and emotional reciprocity, not taking others' perspectives, no give and take in conversations. And probably what most notable, what I found particularly interesting in the information under autism, the students with ASD engaged in restrictive, repetitive, and stereotype behaviors that are more extreme and often interfere with other more appropriate behaviors or learning. Because students with ASD are driven to engage in those behaviors, they are difficult to stop and control. Furthermore, disrupting those behaviors that the student is doing often results in significant distress to the student. Question number 2. Was the conduct in question the direct result of the district's failure to implement the student's IEP? Did this plan that the IEP have appropriate goals and objectives? Was the placement correct? Were the number of hours that were indicated in the IEP what the child was receiving in school? Were all the supplemental services given to that particular child? Occupational, physical, and speech therapy, assistive technology, mobility training, hearing aids. Were all the people that needed to be at the table for the IEP, were they there? Was the IEP held within the time limits of a year review? Did the IEP consider other information as it was moving along, or did they just kind of, roll it over? And most importantly, were the accommodations, modifications that were written into the IEP done by all the teachers and documented as having been done? So that question is twofold in terms of failure to implement the IEP. The first question is whether the programs and services described in the IEP were provided as written. If yes, no further discussion is needed. If no, the second part of the discussion is whether the failure of implementing the IEP, all those little parts, as written directly resulted in the behavior in question. If something would have happened and it would have been what the child needed, a break or some other kind of intervention, if it wasn't provided that particular day, did that cause the behavior to happen? I don't know, when I was writing this, I thought about the little boy in Texas, I believe, that shot his teacher, and that was the first day that his parents had not come to school with him. So that was an intervention that they had set up particular for that particular child. And if you think about the eligibility areas I mentioned, it's very hard to exclude that behavior disability connection, especially if the supports were not consistently provided. If there's an answer of yes to either of those questions, the district must take immediate steps to ensure that the following disciplinary protections occur. The student returns to the prior placement, i.e. school. The conduct in question, if it involves weapons, drugs, or again, that seriously bodily harm, does not need to return, but we have to set up another situation where they can learn. The district must conduct a functional behavior assessment, FBA, and create a BIP, which is a behavior intervention plan. When the behavior in question is a result of our failure to implement the IEP, we must remediate the deficiencies in the IEP. When the conduct in question is determined not to be a manifestation, so we can treat those special education students as any other kid in the district, we still have to provide services as required by law. So the services have to be general education curriculum, access to that, access to learning with their own peers, and reaching the goals that are established in their IEP. If there's no agreement at that particular meeting on whether it was a manifestation, not a manifestation in those two questions, the parent or the child, as you can see in your procedural safeguards, has access to mediation, a due process hearing, file a complaint at the state level, and moving on up the legislative kinds of solutions. The definition of a disciplinary removal and as written in the IEP, still has to have those three components. If they're removed, if we're waiting for the testing to be done, if we're waiting for the MDR to be completed, we still have to provide those services to the student. We're never clear. And there are some districts that didn't find the student eligible for special education, are providing those, and it was more expensive for them to provide that than if they would have let the student back in, because they got to get a higher tutor, they've got to do those kinds of things for that particular student. The only building that meets those three criteria in terms of removals is the middle school, because they have an intervention room where they get the general ed curriculum, they have access to their special education teacher, and usually there's non-disabled students in that room with them, so they meet that criteria. Also, if a student is removed for discipline more than 10 days in the year, can have the protections, even if the student is not eligible for special education, which is also in the materials I gave you. But the district has to be deemed to have had knowledge of that eligibility or that need before the behavior occurred that resulted in the action. And that's the same thing, notified the teacher, notified the principal, notified me, wrote it and put it in writing, etc. Currently, the Department of Education is focusing on suspensions, expulsions of kids, and really they don't want those to happen at all. There's a big discrepancy between different exclusionary factors within those students of disabilities versus students who don't have disabilities. Disabled students have a lot more exclusions from school. Disproportionate suspensions and expulsions for students from racial and ethnic groups. Those are also looked at by the state of Michigan. And before, we had to turn in our data. Well, now they can look at what's happening in Buchanan with just their click of their finger, and they know everything that's happening here. If we have too many kids in this category or too many kids in that category. The other thing that they're focusing on, not just in Michigan, but throughout the nation, is eliminating suspensions in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade. So what Ottawa's doing, and I believe Moccasin has started, is PBIS, which is state school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports. The middle school started restorative justice. So you want to have those system things in place to prevent suspensions and expulsions, so that the environment is conducive to a relationship building and supporting all students, not just regular general students, but also students with disability who have other kinds of issues to deal with. So I'll entertain any questions or anything else I could clarify for you.
I think the information that you provided will be helpful to review before I have questions.
Yeah, there's a lot right there you can in that thing. So it is very confusing, and it is hard to understand for parents too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, move on to the Puerto Rico trip.
Hello, Buchanan board.
Hello.
How we doing?
Hola.
Yeah, hola.
Hola.
I need to start by apologizing to Michelle. This is the worst date night idea I have ever had. These are way less romantic than I thought. All right, so today I would just like a couple of minutes. I know you guys have the info, an overview of the trip, but I just want to share a little bit from my heart, give a brief overview for the benefit of anyone attending, and just share a little bit of the pictures and experiences of past travelers from my previous district. So thank you for your time. So what we're hoping to do is a trip in June of 2024, after the school year has ended, with provisional safeties for baseball or softball state championships, hopefully. But where we want to go is to Puerto Rico. We'd be staying in several sites and locations in Puerto Rico. That's all in the itinerary that's included in your information. Again, we'd like to go in late June, and the students who we'd like to have traveling are any students who have completed at least Spanish 1. Any parents of those students or staff who would like to come as paying travelers would absolutely be welcome. And one of the things I was wondering about was how we'd feel about grads from last year or perhaps even the year before if they're agreeing to the same behavior contract as the other travelers, simply because they lost opportunities for these types of events due to COVID. So I could find that out from you at a later time. But continuing on, the tour company that we travel with is Vámonos Tours. They've been in operation for over 20 years. The owner of the company is from Puerto Rico and is a teacher in the United States. And they're an incredible company, and they make these trips really, really easy. So we had great experiences with them 2013, 2016, and there's details of other staff who did a future trip, and we had one kind of derailed by COVID after that. But their prices are very competitive, and their focus is on education and immersion in the real Puerto Rico. So we're not staying in resorts full of tourists. We're staying in 3- and 4-star local hotels. We're eating in local restaurants. We're really experiencing the culture while we're there and doing things that the locals do as well. Here we have an overview of our prices for the tour. As you can see, the more travelers we have, the better our price breaks are. So that's part of the reason where we welcome any staff or parents who want to come along as well. I think once you get over a certain number, then it gets into a second bus, and so there could be some factors there. But the price really is pretty good, and it covers all of this. We've got airfare, transportation. There's a secondary vehicle that follows in case of emergencies. We've got all their lodging. Everything's included, 2 meals a day, anything besides tips and maybe separate lunches and things like that. And so with all that included, the students don't need a whole lot of extra spending money, and it really is a good value for all that they get to experience on the trip. Here's just a sample of the itinerary. The actual pages for the students have even more detail, like make sure you bring sunblock. This is a day for this activity, you want your swimsuit under your clothes and things like that. But You can see the care that they take into everything, so it tells you what meals are covered that day, and we can have options to have more or less covered, but we choose to sometimes do a little bit less, like have the students cover one of their meals per day, lowers their price a little bit, and it lets them eat in some of the local restaurants that we wouldn't necessarily get to otherwise. So everything's broken down really well, everything's really covered. There's also flexibility, so for some of the events, they could be kind of weather dependent or things like that, and they've always been great about doing what works. So if all the students said, hey, let's check out this lechonera where they do roast suckling pig, and they were like, all right, it's on our way, we can stop there instead of what was on the agenda. Like, they're really good about everything, and the parents are also really well informed of everything going on the trip as well. Through the company, they've got all the contact information for all the hotels, everything, besides their contact with me and the group leaders as well. So what we're hoping to do, I've got just a few pictures here if you don't mind. Some of these obviously are some River Valley students from my last district, but we know that the students from Buchanan would have even more fun than those River Valley kids. So we're hoping to go from Buchanan to Puerto Rico, and then just some of the things that these kids get to see. This trip is a culture and language immersion trip. So they get to do some fun things, but they really get immersed in the culture, in the language of Puerto Rico. So they including salsa dance lessons, which weren't much help for me, I'm afraid. The food they loved, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I mean, the weather is always about 75 to 85 degrees, depending on the time of year, and it's phenomenal. When rain or shine, there's activities to do. Kids have got to do, they always include some adventure components, so the kids get to do things like either caving or zip lining, or we got to, the last trip, tube through like an underground cavern. There's bats up above, and it was wild, absolutely wild. And all the discussion and conversation is in Spanish. They also have a great science focus. So as we're going through El Yunque Rainforest, the only rainforest under the care of the U.S. Parks and Services, the tour guide is showing us newly discovered species and talking about so many factors. It really includes some cross-curricular elements to incorporate not just Spanish language immersion, but science, culture, all these other things. You can see zip lining tours there. I want to preface here before anyone asks, it holds my weight as well. The kids got to swim under waterfalls. It was a really, really amazing experience. And I'd like to wrap with just a couple of snippets from some testimonials. The first is a parent testimonial. This parent had 2 of her kids go. She said, bring either one back. But she said, as a parent, I was very secure and confident in sending Mr. Munyon. He had done extensive research prior to our first meeting. Little for us to do except say, yes, they're in. Follow-up meetings as the trip got closer, answering any questions that might arise. I send the kids videos on suggestions on how to pack a suitcase. We'll get everything done, well and handled. My children had an amazing, life-changing experience on that trip. They rarely texted me. I didn't worry about them. I knew they were busy taking in every sight, smell, and taste. That's what I wanted them to do. What we're asking for is to be able to give our kids here at Buchanan the opportunity to experience this. And what we'd hope to do is travel every few years so that if someone says, ooh, it's not going to work out for me freshman year, by the time they're a senior at least, they could have a second opportunity. So that was the parent testimony. I'd like to read one more. This was a student that I had who's now actually a school teacher in a neighboring district. She said, the Puerto Rico trip in 2013 with Spanish class was one of the best trips I've ever been on. I learned so much about Puerto Rican culture, history, and language that I will never forget. Going on this trip gave me the opportunity to use everything I learned in Mr. Munyon's Spanish class over the years and put it to the test. It showed me that I was able to use the Spanish I was learning in sentences and able to understand what people were saying while they were talking in Spanish. I will tell you, for me, what really cemented my decision to become a Spanish teacher was out of the classroom. It was a small interaction in a public park where some guy just needed to use a cell phone because his had died. And when you see like, wow, I can do this. And it was such a cool thing to be able to connect with people and make those bridges where there would have been walls otherwise. And I'm excited to give our kids the opportunity. That's what I'm hoping for. So she also said we had the opportunity to do things I'd never done before in beautiful places, and goes on for some of the adventure things. But I was strongly encouraged to not get long-winded, so I think I'm going to wrap it up there. But we want to thank you for your consideration for our proposal for our Puerto Rico trip. Does anyone have any questions that I can try to answer?
Mr. Munyon, I'm jealous because the last time I had to go to Puerto Rico was a disaster response after Hurricane Maria, so I didn't even get to have fun.
See all that fun stuff.
And you mentioned other teachers, staff, and parents, but you didn't mention board members. Would they be excluded?
No, absolutely not. I just don't need you and Michelle fighting over who's salsa dancing with me.
I want to say thank you for your information you provided in the packet. Like, all the company obviously had a great detail of information. And I was like, more and more and more, and then all the pictures included. It was amazing, so.
There is far more info that we could have provided. Michelle was like, I don't think you need all that for the board. But any questions that arise, please absolutely reach out. Their communication is great. I have, with the company, like my own representative who handles everything we need. They just take care of everything. So we want to work with our students on some fundraising. We want to keep everybody involved and give as many students as we can the opportunity to participate if you all see fit to approve this trip. So thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Muy bien. All right, information reports and new business, Public Relations Committee.
Yeah, it's ours, but I don't, can one of you? Yeah, please. Thank you, Katie.
The HR committee met on March 1st, and that is Ruth, myself, Kelly, Trish, and Carrie. We discussed resignations, so Mrs. Tulorak, I'm going to say it wrong, the special education teacher at Moccasin is leaving at the end of the year. And then we had 2 lunchroom individuals
staff
from Moccasin also leave. We have a retirement coming for a 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Bowerman, at the end of the year. And then we're notified of new hires. So we have Haley Klein, which is Moccasin Media. Jennifer DeWolf is the Ottawa para. And then Sierra Ellis is also an Ottawa paraprofessional. Kimberly Haynes was one of the replacements for the Moccasin lunchroom staff. And then Elizabeth Schaefer for a BVA mentor. We discussed the salary negotiations for van drivers and kid care, and then also we're notified of some upcoming job fairs that Trish and a few other individuals were participating in. There were 3 of them that are coming up. We discussed the open positions that remain. We have a 2nd grade Moccasin Elementary School, 5th grade at the middle school, kid care aide, a tech support, Cisco teacher, and then special education paras, and then in the fall, we'll have that, those other openings that are coming based on individuals leaving at the end of the year. Discussed potential staffing considerations in the future of maybe rearranging some of the responsibilities. Some of what Mrs. Falkenstein presented is information that we're aware of, are challenges for the schools today. Talking about the work with PBIS, and then maintenance. We did lose an individual in maintenance as well.
Any questions?
Perfect.
It's a lot.
Yeah, good job. All right, Forum Advisory Committee.
So the Farm Advisory Committee, we are just doing our monthly meetings. Right now, they're in the mix of maple syrup. Maple syrup weather has been awful, but then I just heard that Payne Farms and Ghislaine had like their record amount. So that wasn't from them, but that was from somebody else. So it's been hit and miss, up and down. It started really early. We moved our dates like 2 weeks forward for the school. So somebody will come and present after maple syrup, but also we are planning right now in full swing for our plow days, which is April 22nd at the school farm. Starts at 8 o'clock with pancake breakfast and then goes all throughout the day. Lunch starting at, I think, like 11:30 noon in the Sugar Shack. And then we have just a ton of different organizations throughout the community that sponsor, and that will be posted on the school website, the flyer with all the other details shortly, because it's almost done. We're just getting confirmations going. So look forward for the plow day information.
Very good. Any questions? All right, Curriculum and Planning Committee.
I can do that. On February 28th, we had our curriculum committee meeting, and that is Mrs. Robinson, Mr. Curlin, Mr. Pruitt, Mr. Flowers was involved. We had a guest, Mr. Munyon, and our board members are Dr. Carlin and myself. We were able to preview the wonderful trip to Puerto Rico, and Mr. Pruitt covered for Mr. Munyon so that he could be involved in that meeting. So I can attest that this enthusiasm is not just today for this board meeting. There is a lot of enthusiasm, and I just want to say that anytime we get our students outside of the Buchanan district in learning, outside of our buildings in learning, that's phenomenal. We also discussed the 2 new courses that are in our packet today, Mass Media and Marketing, and then Intro to Business. We also were made aware of the benefit that Mrs. Robinson also referred to in terms of having 2 counselors and a fully staffed counseling office. Another exciting opportunity was presented. It will be the 20th anniversary of merging some of the residents of Galene School District. 20 years, that doesn't, yeah, that's just incredible. But Mr. Fry is planning an event at the second game in the fall at football. The athletes who played in Galene will be invited, and there will be a celebration of the merging of the 2 schools. So that's something that he has done in the past, so he's reaching out to some of the athletes at Galene. We also discussed curriculum purchases. The high school, all materials are ordered for English language arts, and at Moccasin, materials have been ordered and received for the Wonders reading curriculum. At the middle school, they're still involved in the pilot of Wonders and Amplify. And then we also discussed that the math curriculum review is in progress. Lots of good curriculum items being dealt with at all levels. So it was a good long meeting. And just so everyone knows, we have a lot of meetings.
Yes, yes.
Every month.
Very good.
So I have a brief report from the Public Relations Committee. So we met February 22nd. It was myself, Carrie Brunsting, and Mr. Phil Place from the district team, and the board members in attendance were Kelly Lesh, Scott Carlin, and Jenny Brackett. We had a few things on our agenda. One was adding awards and recognitions, making sure our staff are connected to some of the memberships and organizations, professional organizations, so that we can then start nominating more of our employees for those national and state awards. So we are working on that. Also, we wanted to kind of refocus some of our district spotlights on academics. So the district is reaching out to the district leaders or building leaders to see what do they want to highlight academically within each building. Another thing we talked about was just our service projects videos. The district, we've been focusing on service projects in each school with some of our videos and things that we are putting out there. And so in addition to the service projects, we'll have an academic focus too. We talked about the use of the district's logo, and there is a policy that we want to just continue with that policy, moving forward with that instead of changing it or revising it, so we'll stick with that policy. And I think the other thing was there was input given just on some informational items for the bond. That's pretty much it.
All right, any questions? All right. Very good. Moving on to item J, public comment. I don't know if I have any public comment cards, but
I don't have any.
just to let you know, per our Buchanan Community Schools Policy 0167.3, that governs public comment at board meetings, each participant may speak once during the meeting for up to 3 minutes, and participants shall direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. Now, the board will listen, take comments and questions under advisement and not respond at this time. I, as president, will refer those questions to the superintendent for research and to respond in a timely manner. And please ensure that if a public comment card has been provided or would be provided, that includes your contact information in order for a desired response to be given in a timely manner. And if there are any more specific questions, they should be directed to the, for the board that requires a follow-up, please email them to the board president and we'll move forward with that. And I don't have any comment cards, so moving on to item K, the adoption of the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion, the Board of Education approves the consent agenda for the regular board meeting of March 13th, 2023 be adopted as written. The minutes, 2021-23 work session, 2/21-23 regular meeting, 3/2-23 special meeting, number 2 warrants, treasury and expenditure reports for February 2023. Number 3, retirement, Lucinda Bowerman, third grade teacher, 27 years of service. Number 4, recommendations to hire as submitted by Moccasin Elementary Principal, Mr. Michael Babcock. Employee Kara Barrett, special education teacher, Moccasin, and Sierra Ellis, paraprofessional, Ottawa. And number 5, employment departures, Jason Paderowski, varsity basketball tennis coach, and Chad Van Beek, maintenance technician, April 3rd, 2023.
Support.
Any additional comments or questions from board members?
No, I mean, we celebrate Miss Bowerman at the end of the year, but congratulations.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Miss Berry?
Yes.
Miss Brackett?
Yes.
Miss Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Miss Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to recommended action, other L1 BVA graduation certification. We have a motion.
I move upon satisfactory completion of district requirements for high school graduation, the Board of Education hereby approves Buchanan step-up student Isaiah Burns.
Support.
All right. Anything to add, Ms. Robinson?
Congratulations to Isaiah.
Congrats.
Congratulations. Any other comments? All right, roll call.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Miss Berry?
Yes.
Miss Brackett?
Yes.
Miss Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Miss Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item L2, support staff leave request. May we have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion that the Buchanan Board of Education grant unpaid leave of absence to Sarah Blair, the BMS Administrative Assistant, from April 17th through April 19th, 2023.
Support.
All right. Anything else to add, Ms. Robinson? Okay. Any questions? All right. Roll call.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Miss Berry?
Yes.
Miss Brackett?
Yes.
Miss Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Miss Ryder?
Yes.
Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item L3, 2024 Puerto Rico proposal for the overnight student trip. May we have a motion, please?
I make a motion the Buchanan Board of Education approves the Spanish trip to Puerto Rico from June 24th, 2024, returning June 28th, 2024. Is that right, 2024?
Yep.
Okay. In accordance with Board Policy 2340, under the supervision of Mr. Eric Munyon.
Support.
We had
Was
a
that Jenny or Barry? Sorry. Barry, thank you.
we had a good presentation, and I don't think we need any or no other questions, right?
He
Roll
left
call.
before the vote.
Yeah.
Expected a celebration. No.
Yeah. Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Miss Berry?
Yes.
Ms. Brackett,
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin,
Yes.
Ms. Ryder,
Yes.
and Dr. Burnett.
Yes. Moving on to item L4, the 2023 first robotics competition overnight student trip. May we have a motion, please?
I move the Buchanan Board of Education approves the robotics team trip to Kentwood, Michigan for the purposes of the 2023 First Robotics Competition. The robotics team is expected to depart March 30th, 2023, and return April 1st, 2023, in accordance with Board Policy 2340. This robotics team trip will be under the supervision of Mr. Philip Place.
Support.
Any other?
I just want to congratulate the team for this weekend's competition, and I know they're going to do well in the next one, so.
All right. Question or comments from board members? All right, roll call.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Berry,
Yes.
Ms. Brackett,
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin,
Yes.
Ms. Ryder,
Yes.
and Dr. Burnett.
Yes. Moving on to item L5, BEA 2023-2024 school calendar amendment. Do we have a motion, please?
I make a motion that the Buchanan Board of Education approves the amended 2023-2024 school calendar recommended by Buchanan Education Association President Tom Brinks and Superintendent Robinson.
Support.
Ms. Robinson?
Just working with the BEA, we have come together throughout the course of this contract to update, revise the calendar, and we'll continue that process throughout the course. And I've enjoyed working with the team on as we discussed and revised the dates to make the calendar more advantageous for students, parents, and staff.
Questions? All right, roll call.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Berry,
Yes.
Ms. Brackett,
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin,
Yes.
Ms. Ryder,
Yes.
and Dr. Burnett.
Yes. Moving on to item L6, 2023-2024 non-renewal consideration of administrative contract. We have a motion.
I'll make the motion that the Buchanan Board of Education acts to consider the non-renewal of the Assistant Superintendent contract for the 23-24 school year due to the elimination of the Assistant Superintendent position and reassignment to the position of Director of Operations and Instructional Systems Coordinator.
Support.
All right, Ms. Robinson, anything to add?
This move better aligns to our strategic goal in academics. So.
All right. Questions or comments? All right, roll call.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Berry,
Yes.
Ms. Brackett,
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin,
Yes.
Ms. Ryder,
Yes.
Dr. Burnett.
Yes, moving on to item L7, moving into closed session for student discipline hearing. We have a motion. I move that the Board of Education moves into closed session for a hearing on student discipline, student number 23972811507. What did I say? 507?
507, got it.
I can't.
At 7:02.
7:02. We had a support?
Support.
Okay. And roll call.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Berry,
Yes.
Ms. Brackett,
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin,
Yes.
Ms. Ryder,
Yes.
Dr. Burnett.
Yes. Let's have a motion to return to open session.
I move the Buchanan Board of Education resolves to return to open session.
Support. At 7:32.
Yep. Roll call.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Brackett?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item L9, student discipline, and I'll read that. Whereas administration has presented to the Board of Education a recommendation concerning the expulsion of a student who is determined to be in violation of Buchanan School Board Policy Number 5517.01 and Number 5610 on Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. And whereas administration has notified the parent or the student and parent involved of the accusations against the student, the recommendations of expulsion, and the rights to a hearing on this date, now therefore be it resolved. The Buchanan Board of Education chooses to expel student number 2937281507 from attendance in Buchanan Community Schools with the following conditions to be met for possible reinstatement to Buchanan Community Schools for the first semester of the 2023-2024 school year. 1, through the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year, request that student number 2307281507 successfully complete the grade level, current grade level while attending BVA, step-up program, or other alternative, or another alternative setting. Second, the student must have 6 sessions of counseling completed with an outside the school district professional, responsibility of the parent or guardian prior to readmittance to meeting with the superintendent of Buchanan Community Schools. Third, upon the completion of the first 2 steps, student and parent or guardian must contact the superintendent of Buchanan Community Schools to schedule a readmittance hearing back into Buchanan Community Schools. Any recommendation will be reviewed by the Buchanan School Board before a decision to reinstate student number 23972281507 will be made. Student may be remitted if all Buchanan policies have been met.
Support.
All right. Roll call.
So real quick, the number now therefore be it resolved is the incorrect number. It says 293, just to let you know. So I think it's the 23972281507. I'm going off of the first, when we went into closed session. 239, okay.
Okay.
So I crossed that off, and we'll just make sure that that's corrected. So
So-
it's the second
So
number
you're
all the way
okay-
through.
Who's that? Ruth, you seconded? So
Yes,
you're
I
okay
did.
with that amendment, making sure that the
Is that okay? All right.
Yes.
ID numbers will match?
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, very good. Not that I was paying attention.
It's okay. I just happened to hear the difference.
Seems all numbery. Okay.
All right.
Roll call.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Brackett?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
And Dr. Burnett?
Yes, and moving on to item L10. PSI HVAC installation contract. May I have a motion?
I move the Buchanan Board of Education approves the HVAC design build installation contract with Performance Services Incorporated.
Support.
Yeah, Ms. Robinson?
And this is the work that we talked about, that we're going to use our ESSER 3 funds to correct some things at Ottawa schools. So this is that HVAC work at Ottawa schools.
All right. Any question or comments from board members? All right. Roll call.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Ms. Brackett?
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes. Dr. Carlin?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
Dr. Burnett?
Yes. Moving on to item L11, Buchanan High School course additions. Motion.
I move the Buchanan Board of Education approve the following courses to be added to the course guide for Buchanan High School: Mass Media and Marketing, and also Intro to Business.
Support.
All right. Any further comment?
These were addressed in the curriculum updates.
Very thorough, written up, and requests. I really liked them. I can't wait. I think they're a much-needed, modern curriculum. So thank you for the two staff that put them together.
It takes a lot of work to put
It was a lot of
together
work, yeah. you could
course guides and all of that, so
Yep.
kudos.
Very good. Roll call.
tell. Mr. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Brackett,
Yes.
Ms. Lesh, yes, Dr. Carlin,
Yes.
Ms. Ryder,
Yes.
and Dr. Burnett.
Yes. Moving on to item M, question or comments from board members.
I do have something, but I gotta find it.
I have a couple that,
Go ahead.
okay. This week is the 40th trip to DC by Close Up. We wish them well and learning about our government. Also, in your materials that you received tonight, you received the First Amendment Boot Camp for school administrators. Administrators from the school district, Mrs. Robinson, Mr. Babcock, Mr. Fry, Mr. Pruitt, myself, attended this 3-hour session on the First Amendment, which I found fascinating for obvious reasons. The first couple were about the public school landscape for the First Amendment, the importance of the forum, student rights and freedom of expression, employees' rights to freedom of expression. In those, I found it interesting that other than the Constitution and the fact that we have a state constitution that was adopted and written in 1963, everything else I taught as current events. So, Miranda, not Miranda, but oh my gosh, I can't think of her name. Tinker, the Tinker case. I had the opportunity to talk to Mary Beth Tinker twice, and she said that even though she took the case to the Supreme Court, her son could not wear what he wanted at school. So I found that interesting. But for the board purposes, we need to review the material that starts on page 33 about our skills in surviving the First Amendment. And so that's from 33 until the end of those, which is basically 40. But if you have any questions, give me a call. I'll go over each and every one. And also, this is the third anniversary of COVID shutdown.
Oh, yeah.
It was the 13th of March, so
forgot
we've
about
learned a
that.
lot. Some things we didn't want to learn.
So mine is just reading through the notes and then the food services that the our funds are needed to support our students that are delinquent in lunch money. And so as a police officer, I do talk to local, I go out and do presentations and I talk about scams all the time. And when people are like, well, how do I donate? Well, donate local, donate to your grandkids' school, donate to your kids' school, donate to those that you know it's going to a safe place, which this is something. So we have the Bucky Fund and we've talked about it for the last couple of years. If you put in, like you go to our website and you type in Bucky Fund, it will come up a thank you that recently Food Services, and I'll just read it real quick. Buchanan Community Schools Food Service Department would like to thank the individual companies and civic organizations who have donated recently to our Bucky Fund. These generous donations allow us to pay down the negative food accounts of those students who do not qualify for free lunches, but whose families still struggle to afford their school meals. So if you would like to donate, it is in, I think it said like around $1,200 we're in the negative. So if anybody is willing and generous to donate, you can contact Becky Kaltenbach at 269-695-8415. You can email her. And then I did talk to Carrie in the business office, thank you, about maybe getting a little information or a tab under food services for that. So I'm hoping with the governor's proposal that we will have free lunches, but if not, up until then, to assist our Buchanan families, please donate. So thank you.
I just wanted to, I know we had it in Points of Pride earlier, but I wanted to state how proud I am of our band programs. I physically traveled up to Paw Paw last week and listened to them perform. It was some of the best music I have heard our band perform. My son actually went along with to help assist both days, which was appreciated from what I understand. And he said that the musicality of our students is superb, and what the comments that the judges had was nothing but glowing. So kudos to our music program.
Cool.
It's
All right.
It's apparent with all of the variety of points of pride and all of the activities.
Yes, a lot.
This school is doing a great job.
Yeah.
You know,
Go Bucks.
All right.
go Bucks.
Lady Bucks tomorrow night. Let's go.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right, go Bucks. And then the last thing is coming up in April, we'll get that information out. We're going to be hosting emotionally intelligent parenting, a little seminar, as well as the following week, we'll be talking about dealing with grief as well and loss. So the police department is going to be sponsoring that coming up. So we're going to get that out so that if parents want to know how to be emotionally intelligent parents, then come on down, because it mimics what we teach our kids in social emotional learning. So
Thank you.
with that said, next board meeting is April 17th, after spring break. Enjoy it. Be careful out there. And we're adjourned.